Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very excited to have the one and only Kraig Kann on the webcast this morning. Kraig is a former on-air personality with the Golf Channel and former Chief Communications Officer for the LPGA. He's currently the Managing Director for Kann Advisory Group and host on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio. Good morning, Kraig. Thanks for joining us this morning on the Catalyst webinar series.
Hey, good morning, John. Tom, thank you to everybody there. It's a great pleasure to be on. I really appreciate the invite, and we're going to keep it fun today. We're going to keep it loose, light. Hopefully, I'll share some information that'll be beneficial to everybody, and we're going to make this interactive as well. So you're going to be my moderator. There'll be a few times I throw it back to you, and to everybody out there. Feel free to make comments in the chat. Okay. John will be looking at that and throwing some questions at me, but I will ask you for some feedback along the way and opportunity for some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You got it. Well, why don't we get started? When this first came to me, you know, I was thinking about what we were talking about, and I know this is the Catalyst series, and I wanted to talk to everybody out there about how we can go next level, right? How we can elevate. And so I started thinking about what the title might be. And I came up with Become a Catalyst for Your Success, your own success. I've been in a bunch of these things, and I've sat where you've sat, and many times, if I'm honest, I feel like I'm a little bit unfulfilled. I don't feel like the message is necessarily driven toward me, or it's just a bunch of information or a data dump, whatever it might be. I want to make sure today that everything that I share is really about you and your success and elevating you. So that's the goal today in the program. Now, I'm gonna ask you for something as well. I'm probably one of the few people that would stand before you or sit before you in this format and say, hey, let's do some social media. Everybody's got their phone. I know that you're probably distracted to some degree, but I want you to do me a favor. And you can, by the way, take pictures of any of these screens, whatever you want to share. But I'm going to ask you for, at the end of this or during it, that's fine too, your aha moments, the things that resonate with you, what stands out, what you can use to benefit yourself. And everybody's got platforms. I think the average American has 7 social media platforms that they use at some way or another. So what I want you to do is perhaps you're going to use Twitter, maybe it's LinkedIn. I want you to use the hashtag #ElevateSCPGA. I think you know what that stands for. But on every post, I want you to use that hashtag #ElevateSCPGA. And at the end, in an hour later today, for example, if we went to Twitter, and we put in that hashtag, we'll see everybody's comments. You'll be able to scroll through the whole thing and see what people post. And what I want to try to do is create awareness, create an amplified message, if you will, for the section and for everybody involved here today. And we'll get a lot of feedback actually by your comments of what is standing out to you, what you can use, how you can be better, where you think the section needs to go, and all of that. So I encourage you to follow me as well at Kraig Kann with 2 Ks. And if you tag me in it or put me in it about the webinar this morning, then I will also comment as well. I'm not just going to like it and I'm not just going to retweet it. I'm going to actually comment as well and share some things. So we're going to try to create this dialogue. That's the goal. Hashtag #ElevateSCPGA. Now, what do we want to talk about here today? I'm very big on the green shoe. If you follow me on social media, on any of my platforms, or if you've been in any of my talks or workshops or webinars, you know that I use this slide to kind of form everything that I discuss. Now, if we look at this here, there are a bunch of white shoes, and obviously there's one pair of green shoes, and the green shoes stand out. And that's what I want you to think about for your section, the SCPGA. Okay, there's 41 sections. How is your section the green shoe? How do you individually stand out as well? Because the white shoes are ordinary and the color green stands out, becomes extraordinary. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Different things that I believe, and John and I have come up with these topics, things that I believe will help you actually stand out. things that will help you go to the next level and your section as well. And hopefully this is all being recorded, and that way you all can have this to look back on later with your comments. So what are we going to talk about today? What are the topics? Well, here they are. Today's conversation, all power to you, by the way. Here we go, a little fist pump and a fist bump as well. Personal branding will be a topic that we discuss. We're going to talk about finding your superpower. Everybody's got one. I'll explain what I mean by that. We'll discuss owning communication. And then what I believe is one of the most valuable things that you can possibly have in your toolbox. And that's being a powerful presenter, owning the power of presentation. It's a separator, it's a differentiator. So there's the 4 topics that we're going to discuss here today in our time. And we'll start with personal branding and what that's all about. Okay. So with that, let me just say this about brand. Brand is really a way to identify yourself. It's not what happens in a room. For me, it's not what happens on this webinar, actually. It's what happens when we're done, when I leave. Your brand is not necessarily what takes place when you're in the room. It's what happens when you leave the room. What do people think about you? What do they say about you? What are your strengths? What are your superpowers, which we'll get to in just a little bit. And brand, if you don't think you have one, I think you're very misguided. Everybody's got one. We have it, whether we like it or not. And our job is to actually take it to the next level. So with that, I want you to think about your direction and where you're going. All right. We've been through a pandemic, and you've probably sat there in your house working from home, maybe not been out with a bunch of people like normal. Where are you going in 2022? What about 2023, 2024? Have you thought about where you want to take yourself? And I challenge people to think about the 5-year plan. And I know that's kind of cliche. People say, where do you want to be in 5 years? But it's actually very, very important. And if you don't think you are a brand, or don't give yourself credit for the brand that you have, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're basically cutting your legs out from underneath you. There are 28, 29, 30,000 PGA professionals out there. How are you a green shoe? How do you separate yourself from other people? Now, the one thing that I'm going to say about this, I understand that attire is different for everybody. I mean, we look at John right now, he's very buttoned up, right? He's got the coat on, no tie. I understand that most of you would not be wearing a suit and tie each and every day, but I can tell you that when you walk into a room, if we're talking about executive presence and going next level, and how can we actually get people to pay more attention to us, take us more seriously, we're not just a guy in the pro shop folding shirts. We're more of an executive. And so I try to challenge PGA members, and by the way, we're all in this fraternity of golf. I challenge PGA members to think of themselves at whatever level they are as a CEO and YOU, all right? Focused on you. And how do you carry yourself? How do you dress every day? Are you buttoned up? What is your presence? Do you want people to take you seriously? And if we want to climb that ladder, back to the slide that I just showed before, climb the steps to a bigger, brighter you and a bigger brand, then we've got to do that. What about leadership? Now, some people are very comfortable in the back. They don't want to do the talking. They don't want to push the envelope in a staff meeting, or going to a conference. Maybe they kind of sit in the background. They don't necessarily go up and start conversation or share about themselves. They're a little bit nervous to promote themselves, their section, or the programs, whatever. We actually, in the industry of golf needs leaders who lead from the front. People who train others, who mentor others. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward. But I want you to think about the opportunities of leadership for you in leading from the front. And we work hard to climb. Go into that next level. There are 25, 28 of you on this today. How are you using your platform? You've worked years to get to where you are. And once you get to that platform, are you using that experience that you have to actually lift up other people. In other words, when you go to work each day, are you going to make a paycheck or are you going to make a difference? Hashtag SCPGA. Are you working to make a paycheck or are you working to make a difference? Not just for your club, your course, but how about the people that you work with? How about the section that you're a part of? How about the industry? How about the PGA of America as a whole? Are you somebody who gets up each and every day with an entrepreneurial spirit and actually tries to push the ball forward? Entrepreneurs wake up each and every day. I mean, I run my own business. I don't know where my next webinar is coming from, my next keynote speech, my next workshop that I do, my next paycheck. I don't know where that comes from day to day, month to month, year to year. My job is to continue to build, but I have to wake up each morning believing in myself, believing in what I share, and not afraid to fail, because failure does happen. I get told no. How do I get told yes? How do I build something special for other people? Where's my green shoe? So I use my platform to share my message. I use my platform that I've built over the years through 18 years at Golf Channel, 25 in television, and 5 at the C-suite level with the LPGA as the Chief Communications Officer, being on the Olympic Committee in 2016 to get golf back into the Olympics. I use those platforms, SiriusXM as well, to share my message, to share about me, and to build my brand. So I ask you, when you go to work each and every day, or as you look at 2022, are you pushing yourself to a higher level? That's what we need to do. We need to push ourselves. We need to actually go next level with what we're doing. So I'm going to share some Craigslists along the way today. I don't sell things on this, and I spell Craigslist a little differently than the one you probably thought about. But when we're talking about brand ambassadors, here's some of the things that I think are very important. Number one, your future actually clarifies your present. Think about that for a second. You know, we're told live in the moment, live in today. That's great. But where do we want to be 5 years from now? Where do we want to be 3 years from now? And if we do that and we think about where we want to go, then that's what we've got to live. That's what we've got to work toward each and every day. Now, that requires asking some tough questions. That requires us to dig deep and think about who we are and what our value is and what other people say about our brand and how we want to take our brand to the next level. We also need to set clear goals. What are those goals that we all have? Because if you don't have goals, you're just wishing, you're just hoping. We've got to define those and try to achieve those. And I'm talking about being a little bit selfish here. Okay? It's okay to be a little bit selfish. If everybody in the PGA was a little bit more selfish about what they could do to go next level, building their brand, would the organization as a whole, would your section not have more leaders, more people of value, of importance? So I'm trying to push you outside your comfort zone. You need to push yourself outside your comfort zone. You have a couple of choices. You can work to be comfortable, and some people do that. You know, they get their check and they do the same thing all the time. Or you can work to be outstanding and be a green shoe. And that's what I want to challenge you. If you think about your greatest successes and where they come from, well, that usually happens from outside of our comfort zone, not inside our comfort zone. All the great things that we achieve do not necessarily come from inside our comfort zone. So I think it's super important to think about that stuff and actually make sure that we're willing to get a little bit edgy and get a little bit stressed out. And can I do this? Can I achieve this? Is this going to work? I think that's important. And with that, along the way, I said this is going to be interactive. I'm giving you guys all an opportunity to chime in and chat. John, I'm gonna let you take it here for a minute. If you've got a question for me or something that you wanted to share, something that resonates with you.
Well, I think something that you said that resonates with me right off the bat is the kind of the green light to be selfish. It's that selfishness that actually enables a selfless behavior.
Mhm.
Like for me personally, I wanted to get involved in governance in the section, because I wanted to progress in executive leadership from a selfish initial motive. But that selfish motive has enabled me to be selfless in terms of the time that I give back, in terms of the Catalyst webinar and the Launchpad Associate workshops, and giving back and volunteering my time to the section has actually been a selfless activity that started with selfish motives. So I believe that that resonates with me tremendously. I got a question from Tom Parker here. What does age do with all of this? He's 65 years old. Do his goals and desires to become a leader in his section in national on the national platform seem unrealistic?
Okay, so I think that's a great question, and thanks for sharing that. Look, I'm 55. All right, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be 56. I think my best years are still ahead of me, not behind me. And what I challenge people to do is, and I don't think people do this. I don't know how many years many of you have been with the PGA of America. I don't know what other jobs that you all have had, but if we look at those as building blocks in our career, okay, so I've got a building block of local television, 8 years. And what I've done along the way is I've written down some of the things that I succeeded at, some of the differences that I've made, some of the influencers that influenced me, those that I've been able to influence. Same thing with the Golf Channel, 18 years. Same thing with the LPGA. Where were my successes? Where were my failures? What did I learn from it? Now, 65 years, hey, that means experience to me. I don't look at it as, I hope when I'm 65, I'm still doing the same thing with the same energy and the same passion. But I'm going to take those years of experience and build upon that. So many people don't spend the time to go, okay, what have I done over, if I'm 65, we'll call it 40 years, 45 years of my career. And what have I learned? And what can I share in a mentorship role? How can I elevate the PGA of America? How can I elevate the section that I'm in? That's what I would say. You're never too old to make a difference. Never too old to make a difference. So I don't want anybody to think otherwise. Anything else?
No, sir. Well,
all right, perfect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's keep it on. Let's keep this thing rolling. And I appreciate the comments. Continue to add those because we'll continue to break this down as we go. Let's move on to the topic of superpower. I love this topic. This is one that I just did a big workshop and webinar last week for a company in California. We talked about the importance of superpowers. So the first thing is, what is it, right? What is that superpower? And a lot of people are like, oh man, I got kryptonite. I don't have these superpowers. I see my struggles more than my strengths, or I see my weaknesses, or I don't know if I'm good enough to be able to make that true difference. So what is a superpower? Well, it is your unique area of strength. Now, each and every one of us is born with an inner genius. We've all got it. John might be, super skilled at one thing that I am not at all. I know that math and finance has never been my thing. When my kids were growing up, they never came to me for math homework. They'd come to me for history and English, and I'm great at that. I know that I'm a pretty darn decent speaker and presenter, but I'm not good with technology. All right. And I know that. So talents that can be developed are superpowers as well. So when we find out what we're good at, how do we use those? And I'll get into that here in just a second. How do we use those to take us to the next level? These are things that are realized at an early age, which is thus the image that I've got here in front of you. When we're young, we start to see, where our strengths might have been. My parents still tell stories about how, I walked into a room and they were entertaining people, and I was like 6 or 7, and I walked in and I started talking with all the adults, like I was on stage or something like that. I've never had a fear of an audience. And so I developed that over time. And that's what I always wanted to be, was a broadcaster. I wrote about that in my book, Can You Get Our Attention? So I think that's important to think about that at an early age. Now, why do they matter is a great question. Why do superpowers matter so much? Think about that. I think you could probably come up with some of the answers. These are things that create our competitive advantage in the marketplace. And it allows us to work from our areas of strength. They give us that chance to grow. They're a launching pad. If we're in the starting blocks, how do we get going? How do we take off? How do we have that fire, that burn, that energy? Superpowers matter because that's what separates us from somebody else. Now, if you think about the thousands of PGA professionals that are out there, why is it important for you to be different? If everybody's the same, what do we really accomplish? There are a lot of people that do workshops, leadership workshops, like I do. But when somebody says, Kraig, I've been to your workshop, leadership communication and presentation and all that, I've never seen anything like that. I said, perfect. That's what I want it to be. I don't want it to be like anybody else. There are many people that have been on television, same age as me. I got to find my way to carve my own niche and be different. How do you do that each and every day? So how do we locate that superpower? Where are we looking? What is in front of us? And how can we use that? Well, here's some talent indicators. Ask yourself, where do you learn quickly? What things come easy to you? And then when do you lose track of time? Those things would be, some weaknesses, and you've got to find a way to overcome that. What does come naturally for you? You got to write these things down. So, I don't know how many of you journal on a day-to-day basis, but a lot of my journaling and a lot of my thoughts and a lot of my blogs over time were what led to my book that came out last year. You've got to think about those things that actually can help you go next level. When you were a child, what did you love to do? And where did that passion take you? Perhaps in your school, middle school, high school, college, all of that. Now, you have to listen, and we've got to observe. We've got to see what's going on around us. So I highlighted a couple of these here. Think about this when we're locating our superpowers. Have you ever thought about when somebody says, man, you were amazing? That was really good. What is it? Well, those are important cues to you for what you might need to do. I'll tell a quick story. I was in Naples at the LPGA year-end event years ago. When I was there 2011 to end of 2016. And at the CME Group Tour Championship, I was emceeing the Rolex Awards night, where we handed out Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all those different things. And I also had my opportunity to deliver a message that night and speaking in front of, all of our stakeholders and everybody with the LPGA and all the players that were there, all of that. As I walked off the stage that night, somebody who I truly, truly valued, who was one of our partners in apparel, pulled me aside and said, you're in the wrong line of work. And I said, what are you talking about? I love my job. They said, no, you need to be speaking more. You need to be doing this more. You need a different audience. You need to be on a stage. It actually was a thought-provoking thing for me that led me to think, okay, how can I take all the things that I do? And I'd already had some of these thoughts, but if speaking is something that makes an impact on people, and if you have a true message, then maybe that's the direction you need to go on a more regular basis. So when have people said that to you? And what do you do well that you would actually sacrifice other things to get better at that one? The last thing, and I highlighted it here, is when are you fearless? We're all scared and nervous. I talk about the words anxious and anxiety. Now they sound kind of the same, but anxiety is like a stressor to me. It makes you think, I've got anxiety. I'm a little nervous about this, that, or the other. Anxious means, hey, I might have some edge, but I'm excited to do it. And I coach executives on public speaking. I've been coaching this week for a Fortune 100 company for these people that are all doing presentations today. All right. It's been a lot of fun for me. And the thought process I try to get into their mind is, hey, some people say, I have to give a talk next week. I have to present next week. I want to change their mindset to, I get to give a talk next week. I get to present next week. And that mindset is something that's really big. So we have to listen and observe what people are saying. We need to take note of things. And the one I highlighted here amidst this list is being able to easily influence others. So if you think about what your superpower is, What might that be, right? Tom Addis has a great history, a great resume of things that he's accomplished in the game of golf. How did he influence others? What was his superpower that he was able to deliver in leading the PGA of America? Do you think about those things? Like, what was it that helped me at Golf Channel? What was it that helped me make a difference as the head of communications for the LPGA, sitting on that board in that executive room? What was my voice? What was the differentiator that I had that I brought to the table that others might not? So when you see patterns of some of the things that you believe, and it's okay, by the way, I'm giving you the power to say, I'm good at this. A lot of people get nervous. You know, they think they're just self-promoting or talking about themselves. I'm giving you the authority and permission to be able to say, I'm good at something. That's powerful and that's positive. Now, how do we use and invest the superpower? This is where it gets fun. This is where people should get excited because we've got something. Now we need to put it into the marketplace. And we have to take steps along the way to do that. So there are a bunch here. And again, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but examples of investing, coaching and mentoring as we walk up the ladder of success or up the ladder of leadership. Is there anything better than coaching or mentoring somebody else? I mean, we always need to think of succession plan. The PGA of America does it all the time. Every year they have their, next election for the next secretary. And then that secretary climbs that ladder and on the way we go. And ultimately, we've got a new president of the PGA of America. Coaching and mentoring to help them get to that next level and make a difference when they get there. Are you doing that at your club, at your course? What are you doing with your superpowers? If that's one of them and you're really good at it, use it. And then, back to the question that we got earlier, 65 years of age, all that means to me is you've got more life experiences and career experiences than other people do. How are you using those? Or are you sitting on them? I ask people, how many years you've been in your organization? They'll say 10, 15, 20. Wow, that's a lot. What are you doing with it? You're sitting here in my workshop. Would you rather be here in a workshop, or would you rather be at an industry event, sitting on a panel representing your industry? Or you could be in the back with a lanyard on representing the company or the organization, or you could be in the front of the room, one of 4 people who's actually got the lanyard on representing their company, but they're also speaking on behalf of the industry. They're an industry influencer. They're using their career and life experiences for the benefit of other people. So why do I believe you need a superpower? These are my 4 things here. Number 1, reputation is all we've got. That's our biggest thing. You all will say something about each other when you see them speak or deliver for the organization. You'll say something about me. I have a reputation. We can't get away from that. So you might as well make it a good one and use that superpower to do it. Marketplace requires it today. It's a challenge finding the right job, and it's a challenge finding the right thing for you to succeed. The marketplace wants differentiators. They want superheroes, if you will. They want people with superpowers. Employers, when you're being interviewed, they seek it. When I was at the LPGA and we interviewed people, I would ask them when they came into my office, whether they were coming for an executive role or to be on my communication team, give me 3 things that separate you from somebody else that I might be interviewing for the same job. And that's a challenge that I put before you as well. What is it that separates you from others? And if you want longevity within the industry or the organization, longevity means that you better have a superpower. You need that in your toolbox. What is the one thing people will say about you that they might not say about somebody else? So with that, I'm going to toss it back to you, John, and you can share any of the other comments that are now in the box, if you will, and we'll chat about it for a second.
Well, I think when you talk about superheroes, what are superheroes? Superheroes are, if anything, above everything, they're fearless. And so when you talk about the I have to give a presentation next week, or I get to give a presentation week, it comes down to gratitude. If you're grateful for what you have. And it's all, it's all subjective, right? It's the same reason why you see, billionaire rock stars unhappy with their lives, and people that, of limited means, the happiest people that you meet on the planet. It comes down to gratitude. And when you're grateful, that produces energy. When you have that energy, that produces fearlessness. But it all comes back to gratitude.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. Yeah, there's nothing better than being fearless, and I get really excited about certain things. Hey, I get nervous to a small degree about a speech or a webinar or this or that, but I do the same thing with myself each and every time. I have a little talk with myself. How am I gonna hook them at the very beginning? How am I gonna hold them during my talk? And if I can do those two things, I'll be excited about the ending. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I'm fearless when I get up there. I look at people and have conversations as though everybody's a trophy. We got to win them, but we got to have a message, and we've got to have that superpower of strength within us and a skill set within us to make a difference, not a paycheck.
And you look at, soldiers that are going into battle, or superstar athletes, or world-class surfers. When we as a species are at our most fearless, that's when we're at our best. When we're the most fearful, that's when we're dominated and we're at our worst. No question.
No question. Any comments, anything in the chat that we need to address before we move on?
I got one here. It says, what do you recommend we do when we listen about what everyone believes is our superpower?
So that's a really good question. So I have this exercise in my workshop where it's a little bit of a personal and professional brand awareness exercise. And they go through a workbook, and I ask people to write down what they believe their strengths are, what they would be known for within the organization. Then the other people in their little small group actually tell them, here's what I believe your superpower is. Here's what I believe you're known for. And what's interesting in this little exercise is, do the things other people say about you match up with what you believe your strengths are and what your value is? If so, that is your brand. That truly is your brand. Not only do others believe it about you, but you believe it about yourself. So listening and getting feedback from others. A lot of people are nervous about being critiqued. Not me. I've been critiqued my whole career. Oh, I don't like this guy on TV. Oh, I like this guy on TV. Hey, could have done this better. Could have done that better. All that stuff is really important, but we have to listen. So looks like Tom just jumped in. How does, I didn't see the end of it. It popped off the screen. Tom had a quick question.
Yeah, Craig, sorry. You talk about fearlessness, which I agree. How does one mix fearlessness with caution when caution is needed?
Yeah. So caution. Let's talk about that for a quick second. I think we all need to be a little bit cautious. We all need to make sure that we're going about things the right way. We live in a society now where everybody wants to point out your mistake, or very quickly we can actually do that. But we've got to be confident enough about our superpower and about our strengths that we're able to overcome some of that. Now, being cautious means being careful. Being cautious means listening about what's going on around us. I always remember Mike Wan talking about listen, learn, then lead. And I think that's super important. But I think we all need to adopt a little bit more on the, hey, I'm fearless in going into our job each and every day, especially if we want to climb the ladder, especially if we want to go to the next level. Because being timid, being nervous, means sitting in the back of the room and not pushing the envelope. And that doesn't get us anywhere. I used to like meetings where people would actually challenge me and try to make the meeting a little bit uncomfortable because they had an idea. And I think that's important that everybody actually share. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next topic. And that next topic is communication, which is what I was just discussing. And I think it's one of the keys to success. Owning communication. You're thinking, wait a second, we all communicate. What are you talking about? Well, first off, communication is the link between ideas and action. Now, we might all have ideas. We can write them down and we can say, I think we need to get this. By the way, if you got 10 ideas, you really don't have any. You need to think about the best ones and then say, all right, how can I move the ball forward? How can I get this across the finish line with fearlessness? And how can I get people to take action? And communication is the link between ideas and action. I know when I speak in front of an audience, I want them to do something at the other end, which I'll get into here in a second. When it comes to leadership and communication, those things are tied. They are very much linked. The best leaders are great communicators. Poor communicators are not great leaders. It leads to confusion. People leads to gossip. It leads to a lot of people who don't know what they're supposed to be doing or what the mission is. And people make choices in organizations. They choose to listen. They choose based on whatever degree of communication to engage or not. They choose to act, and they choose or not to deliver for the organization based on the degree of communication that's put before them. So if we want to wear the red cape, if you will, in being that superhero, we've got to be a leader who understands communication. Now, why does owning communication matter so much today? Well, I'll tell you this. Warren Buffett says that of all the skills that you could have, and by the way, Warren Buffett's made a little bit more money than all of us here put together, says the one skill set that you can own that will increase your value, your revenue opportunities, your paycheck, if you will, by more than 50% is communication and public speaking. That's the one skill. Think about that for a second. Now, most people, believe it or not, are afraid of public speaking. They're afraid to do it. They don't want to sign up for a public speaking class. I love coaching executives in public speaking, but the number one fear among all Americans is actually public speaking. And number two is death. That's true. It's in a survey, which makes no sense to me because it basically says that people would rather be buried underground than be above ground, talking about the life they lived before they were buried underground. I mean, it makes no sense. And I try to tell people we need to die for the opportunity to speak, present, or, deliver and communicate. So communication is huge and owning it is big. It's your opportunity, not an obligation. It's your opportunity to promote and sell you. The best communicators are promoting themselves. You're thinking, what are you talking about? I don't need to promote myself. I'm talking about selling yourself, whether you like it or not. The way we communicate promotes ourselves. Doesn't necessarily promote us up the ladder, but it gives us a chance to promote who we are, what our story is, what our message is, all of that. It's also for an organization an opportunity to promote through communication and owning it, promote and sell company news and information. How well do you do it? It's important. It's also the opportunity to promote and sell the company brand story. And every company's got a story. I work with a lot of companies. What's interesting is when I get people in the room, we go through this exercise. Who are we? What do we do? Why do we do it? What's our differentiator? What's the big three things that everybody needs to know about us? They're all over the map. They don't even necessarily know the story of the organization. Ask yourself, how many of you truly know the history and the story of the PGA of America, or the Wanamaker Trophy, or the major championships, or the Ryder Cup? Ask yourself that. What about the club that you represent? Do you know its story? Do your people know the story? It's an opportunity to promote and sell that. And word of mouth marketing, because most of us don't have a $2 million marketing budget or a $5 million marketing budget, it matters today more than ever before. Yap, 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 yap. Everybody's going to say something about everything. That's just the world we live in. Television has changed. We're not storytelling as much. We put people on a panel and everybody's got an opinion. Those opinions create feedback and they create what people believe about an organization or a person. You can choose to believe or not, but word of mouth marketing, having a positive influence, is bigger than ever before. So what do top leaders do? And how are they great communicators? Well, number one, they maintain a connection with their people. During the pandemic, I had some talks. I kind of took it upon myself while I wasn't as busy, talking to CEOs and leaders and kind of taking a little bit of a survey. And I would say, what are your biggest challenges right now during this pandemic? And one of them said, communication is my biggest challenge. Everybody's siloed and I've got to maintain a connection with my people. Got to keep them informed, which is number 2 on this list. The other one, somebody said that really stood out to me was, we're in a situation now where top talent is tough to recruit. It's also tough to retain. People are going to have opportunities to move along because everybody's looking for the best of the best. So people might have been furloughed or laid off, and there's a lot of talent around there. So you need to allow your people, great leaders and great communicators, allow others to have a voice, not just them. Not just them. So very important in your organization, in your section, you've got the president, you've got the secretary, you've got the VP, all those things. What about all the other people? Do they get a voice? Do you allow them to speak and share what they're dealing with on the front line and what they're dealing with at their clubs and helping be a part of the long-term goals? Great communicators and great leaders understand that there needs to be a desired outcome. Whenever I'm communicating to anybody, whether it's delivering a speech, keynote, putting out an email, even putting out a blog, social media, I think about outcome first. What will people do? What will they say? What do I want them to think? What do I want them to do? Remember, communication, link between ideas and action. What are they going to say? Then I back up and go, all right, does this fit that I'm trying to achieve? That stuff is important. So with that, I'm going to toss it back to you one more time here, and I'll let you, John, jump back up full screen somehow and take control.
Well, especially when you talk about keeping the communication lines open, particularly from a management standpoint, when you are, it's easy to get caught up directing people to accomplish tasks. It's so much less effective in the directing model than it is to incorporate the subordinates or the coworkers in a way where if you ask questions that help them become a part of the solution process, you're so much more apt to get more buy-in from action.
Totally.
A good example is, it's like telling a golf professional to go mark the course for round under repair before a tournament, instead of just directing, going to them and involving them in the process of, hey, we've got a lot of wet spots out there. We've got a lot of places that don't have 100% turf coverage. What can we do to make a more enjoyable experience for the tournament participants? You involve them in the solution by asking questions and keeping that communication open. You're so much more apt to get better buy-in from the action and accomplish the directive.
Yeah, no question. No question. I think that's really important. Letting other people have ownership, if you will, of the organization, letting people have a part of the communication message, letting others be involved. If people don't have a voice, they don't feel engaged. It's tough to inspire them. It's tough to empower them. You end up with a bunch of people kind of just sitting there saying, yeah, I'm a part of this, but they don't really feel like they truly can make that difference. And I think you need to give people that opportunity each and every day. Important. Good point. Really good point.
Agreed. I mean, it's like this interactive presentation this morning. If you were just presenting your PowerPoint, and it was like you alluded to earlier, a data dump, and I wasn't a part of it, you probably would have lost me at 4 or 5 different points along the presentation because I'm not involved in it, but I'm involved in it. So it's like I'm apt to pay attention because I'm part of the process. I'm part of the presentation.
In every webinar that I do, and I wrote down a bunch of names. I know Anthony's here, Gavin, James, Michael, Mike, Brett, Robert. I could call on everybody if we had truly the amount of time and let everybody talk and let everybody be engaged. And I'll challenge people to open up their microphone and put their camera on. And then we really have that interactive dialogue. And once you call on one person and get them engaged, and everybody else like, whoa, he might call on me. And that's what I try to create. I think it's important. So with that, and knowing I want to leave a little time at the end for some questions and people to pop up their camera. That's the goal here, folks. So if you've got a question or a comment, I'm encouraging you, it's coming up here, to get ready to pop up that camera and microphone, because I'd love to hear from you. I rattled off some names already. The last topic is winning presentation. And obviously this is one that I get really excited about. I want to tell a little story about this slide. Okay. This slide is how I begin most all of my talks. I'm giving myself away here a little bit, but I'll bring somebody up in front of the room and then I ask them, okay, here's your audience. Who are you? Tell everybody and why we should care. Now, here's what happens. A lot of times people that, oh boy, have no idea. They stumble, they stammer, they don't have that answer. And yet I'm giving them that stage, that opportunity to promote and share about themselves. And the thing about it is it does two things. Number one, it actually proves my point that most people don't think about themselves and their true value and why people should pay attention to them. Thus, back to my book, Can You Get Our Attention? That's the title of the book. Each and every day, we have some moment where we are able to storytell, share, or whatever. What are you going to do when your moment comes? So the first thing is, most people don't think about the answer to that question. The second reason I do it is because the minute I bring one person up there, everybody else in the room says, uh-oh, they start looking around or they sit up in their chair and they know that I might call on them next. At that point, I've got everybody's attention. And that's one of the hardest things to do in presentation and speaking, is engage other people and keep them there. So what I want to share when we're talking about presentation is I'm tying it to brand communication. All right. Now, I know you don't sit around in these boardrooms all the time, but I want you to apply it to what you do and follow along here, because I'm going to give you three things. I'm very big on three things. Today's new executive order. It's different from before when we're talking about presentation. And when we talk about brand communication, the first form of presentation that's critical in putting out our messaging is in-person presentation. By that, I'm talking about public speaking. And most people are like, well, public speaking, so behind a podium? No, not necessarily. Public speaking and in-person presentation is actually in a boardroom, having a staff meeting, could be a media opportunity, could be a lot of different things. So you need to be proficient at that and have your message and be able to own it in front of a room. Presenting in person is huge. Number two is the online presentation. Obviously, you know what I'm talking about here. That's basically, for lack of a better way to say it, winning the web. Okay, this is an online presentation. It's also a public speaking opportunity for me, for John, for you all, if you so choose. But online, emails are huge. How many emails do you get a day? Do you think about how you communicate with others and how you present you? Do you present not only your message, but the best of yourself? Now, when most people type emails, by the way, they just start typing away, blah, 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 blah. And they forget the most important thing, which is the subject line. That's where we need to start, because if I get 50 emails, what's going to make me open yours? It better be a good headline. And then when we write the email, anything more than 3 paragraphs, you need to start a blog, you need to write a book. People don't have that kind of time. So online presentation is big, and it can be a website. It can be the way you present in a blog. That's important. Thirdly is social media. And some people don't love it. Some people don't adopt it, but I'm here to tell you that the next line of PGA professionals, all right, who are in the PGM program or who love golf and want to get involved, they live on this stuff. More than 88% of kids, Gen X, Gen Z, all that, they're looking at their phone before they get out of bed. They're on social media all day long. I'm on social media a lot. Until somebody tells me that it's pay per post or pay per view, I'm going to ride it right into the ground. I get a lot of my business off of it. And you all are going to post today about your takeaway from this presentation. What's your greatest takeaway? What will you do differently? What did you learn? What was it like? Social media presentation is big. So I'm getting back to my H's that I was talking about earlier and what top presenters do. Number one, when we're online, when we're in front of an audience, or when we are doing social media, there's all these choices. There's all these people. Number one, we got to hook them. Average attention span of a human being, 8 seconds. 8 seconds. A goldfish is 9. You can look that up. I don't know how they ever determined that, but that's the true story. Had a guy, by the way, in a workshop I did who raised his hand and he said, Kraig, I beg to differ with you. Everybody's looking around. This guy stands up, and I said, what do you mean? He said, 8 seconds is a real long time. It's a long, long time. Everybody's like, what? And I said, go ahead, sir. The floor is yours. He said, thank you. I was a professional bull rider for 15 years. And I'm here to tell you that 8 seconds is a real long time. The whole place erupts. Everybody laughs. We all get it. 8 seconds is not a long time. That's what John had to get me excited about his intro and him to get you all engaged. That's all I had when I started to get your attention. So number one, I've got to hook them. A top presenter has to hook them first. Then you've got to hold them. And what do I mean by that? I spend my time, and I've done it throughout this presentation, in my head thinking that you all are thinking this. So what? Who cares what's in it for me? So what? Who cares what's in it for me? Because it's really got to be about you. My content today has to be value for you. I'm not here to just spew information. I got to provide you something that you can use moving forward that will hopefully make you better, the PGA section better, the organization better. If you do that, you've got them. Then you have them. But lastly, a top presenter is there to help people. And by that, I mean providing value, giving them tools to take to the next level, making sure, see, my job as a presenter today is to make you remember what you're supposed to remember. Make you remember what you're supposed to remember. And I know that my goal is a standing ovation every time I speak. How do I get that? And how do I get that is actually by thinking about when you're gone. And then I work my way backwards. What do I want them to say? What do I want them to tell others about? What do I want them to do? And then I say, all right, now how can I achieve that? So my job is to provide information that will help you. And that's what top presenters actually do. So John, one more opportunity for you here to take control and let it rip.
Well, I think there's a tremendous amount to be said about so what, who cares, what's in it for me. I think that what's in it for me is, it goes back to that green light to be a little selfish. In order to really get what you want out of that presentation, you want what's in it for me? How am I going to benefit from Kraig Kann telling me how I can be a superhero? And it's like Robin Shelton, one of my mentors, who's the GM and the section president. He's the GM and down at Newport Beach Country Club. He would always tell me self-interest isn't the only dog in the race, but it's definitely the one to bet on. But I think if you could speak to that, what's in it for me? How am I going to get better? You're going to be more apt to hook them in the presentation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's got to be about the audience. Audience first, every single time. Very, very good. So I want to leave everybody with some thoughts here. And I've got one word that I want you all to take away from today. And that one word is something that I hope you'll put into play and that I hope you'll think about from an organizational standpoint and from a personal standpoint. And that word is elevate. Elevate. I want you to think about, how do we climb that mountain? How do I climb that mountain? How do I get next level? And not only that, not only for me personally, but can I elevate others within my course, within my section, to make us better? In other words, how can we make, and notice the color here is green, how can we make our section the green shoe section among the 41? How can we be innovative? This is important. How do we set the curve, not follow the curve? And how do I, in my day-to-day work, set the curve and not follow it? Again, my workshop, completely different than other people's. Perfect. My webinars, different. I want everything to be unique. YOUNIQUE. But we've got to elevate. That's what we need to do each and every day. So if I'm trying to drive you toward action, and I need the word drive emphasized here, all right, I'm back to the superpower if you kind of figure this whole thing out. I want to give you all 3 for the road. And I do this each and every time. Again, I'm a big 3 things guy. And I want you to think about these things, these questions on the way out here today, before you have the opportunity to ask some questions at the end. Can you identify your superpower? I want you to spend time doing that. I'm challenging you to try to identify your superpower. Number 2, how have you built upon it? If you already know what it is, have you used it to your advantage, to the organization's advantage, to your team's advantage? Can we take it and go next level? All right. If your superpower is organization, can you make the organization more streamlined, better, more efficient? If it's that you're really good at owning a room, do you speak more often? Do you have a message? Do you do that? Do you coach others to become better if you're good? Important. Lastly is my green shoe thought. Can you find new ways to influence others with that superpower? In other words, have you been sitting on it? I don't know. That's for you to figure out. But can you find new ways to influence people? That's a challenge for all of us. That's 3 for the road. And now, any questions that anybody has for me, feel free to pop up your camera and jump on board before we head out of here today. And if you've got any, John, you've got the microphone and the floor.
Well, I think you had alluded to this earlier when you talk about it's not so much what we're getting out of this presentation as it's happening during this, very finite 60-minute period. It's what's going to resonate in our minds after we walk away, after this presentation is over, after we go back to our lives and our careers. And there's always 1 or 2 nuggets that are huge in that. And I think for me personally, it was the ability to be, the ability to be fearless, and the ability to not be afraid of making things uncomfortable in a meeting. Whether I'm meeting with my board of directors or with staff, that fearlessness and not being afraid to challenge people, because that uncomfortableness is what allows those moments to resonate in those people's minds after those meetings have come and gone.
Yeah.
So Kraig, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, I want to thank you for your time in presenting and sharing your insight. We're very, very grateful. We know that you have a tremendously busy schedule and you do a lot of things. And for you to volunteer your time for the Catalyst webinar this morning, and I'll highlight that word volunteer. We are eternally grateful. Thank you very much for being on the webcast this morning. For all the PGA members that are on this morning's webcast, you will receive 1 MSR credit for attending today. And thank you very much for supporting the Catalyst webinar series. And also, Kraig will be our keynote speaker at the Power to Grow live seminar at Hacienda Golf Club on Monday, June 20th.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. Yeah. And here's a reminder, folks. I want to see something on social media. Go ahead and bang me on Twitter or any of those other sites at Kraig Kann. Hashtag Elevate SCPGA. I want to hear what your takeaway thought. The big takeaway thought today was from the webinar and the program. And I'll be looking for that later today as I'm hopping a flight in about 3 hours time. So John, I want to say thank you to you and to everybody who participated here today. I mean, I don't know if this comes across, but this was a get to, not a have to for me. And I really enjoyed it. And I hope we can elevate everybody here within the organization. I've always been a big fan of the PGA of America. And I hope today allows you all to become a catalyst for your own success. So thanks a lot for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kraig. Take care, and we'll see you on June 20th.
You got it. Looking forward to it. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Kraig.
My pleasure.